Jinx's time on top of the meta comes to an end this patch, while the Swain mini rework finally makes its way to live servers. 12.8 is a massive patch, so we've got you guys covered with how the meta will be shaping out and a complete update on the solo queue tier list, thanks to the help of our challenger players and analyzing the most recent data. But before we get into it, be sure to check out SkillCapped if you want to truly get better at League of Legends. We're the only service that offers a money-back guarantee if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service. We do this because our service really does work, and if it doesn't work for you, you shouldn't pay. Learn more at the end of this video or click the link in the description below. There are 8 different skins set to drop for 12.8, the first being Gangplank the Betrayer. Next is Sea Dog Yasuo, followed by Solar Eclipse skins for Kayle, Sejuani, and Sivir, while Aatrox and Senna receive Lunar Eclipse skins. The Prestige skin is being handed over to Senna. Riot has kept it quiet on the item and rune front for 12.8, so let's jump right into the top lane changes. Mordekaiser's mid to late game will be getting a boost with his passive movement speed increased from 3% at all ranks to 3% at level 1, 6% at level 6, and 9% at level 11. 9% at level 11 is going to be pretty nuts and provide Mord with way more sticking power. Mord will definitely be a pick to watch for 12.8 and slots into our S tier as a highly valuable option. If you're having a difficult time countering mobility top lane champs, Poppy is going to be an even better answer for 12.8. W cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds at all ranks, R1 knockup is going from 0.75 seconds to 1 second, R2 missile speed is bumped up from 2000 to 2500, R2 knockback distance is increased by 1000 units, going from 2400 to 3400. Our channel refund is reduced from 30 to 15 seconds. When you add them all together, some really solid buffs for Poppy heading into this patch. W cooldown dropping by 4 seconds is huge in allowing Poppy to play more aggressive more often into champions with dashes. Poppy has been one of the most underrated top laners in previous patches, so with these buffs, she'll be moving into S tier. The top lane tier list will consist of Darius, Quinn, Garen, and Shen as the most broken solo queue picks. If you're looking for a good answer to Sion, seeing that his play rate has spiked as of recent, Mordekaiser is a super good option, especially after his buffs. Uxin is a really underrated yet valuable top laner to play for the current meta. Uxin performs exceptionally well into Gangplank, who's being spammed a ton right now due to his recent buff. The best low elo picks to climb from top lane are Garen, Yorick, and Nasus. Shen, Fiora, and Darius are a few of the best ban choices. It's been a pretty long time since we've seen Sejuani in meta, so Riot's issuing a buff to her passive. Cooldown is being lowered from 12 seconds at all ranks to 12, scaling to 6 seconds based on level. This will definitely help in some mid to late game skirmishes and give Sejuani the ability to dip and dive into fights with more tankiness. 12 seconds was just such a massive duration, and you'd usually never be able to get multiple usages out of it, but that will now change. Sejuani is really close to breaking into A tier, but she will remain in B tier for now. Fiddle's sustain in mid-game skirmishes is getting a small buff for 12.8, with his W healing increased from 30 scaling to 50% to 30 scaling to 70%. Of course, W is the spell you max out first on Fiddle, so at level 9 you'll be feeling the full effects of the buff. We can't see this change being enough to move Fiddle into an OP tier slot, but he'll be one of the best S tier junglers this patch. The complete jungle tier list will feature Rengar, Nocturne, Diana, Volibear, and Kha'Zix as the 5 OP picks. One minor adjustment for this patch includes Wukong moving from A into S tier. The buffs have been extremely positive in providing the champion with a ton of power in the jungle, so he's an exceptional option right now. Man, has Hecarim ever been decimated by those recent nerfs, as he currently holds the lowest win rate for any solo queue jungler. Heck and Olaf are definitely the 2 picks you really want to be staying away from. Rammus, Volibear, and Shyvana are our top 3 low elo recommendations. Ka, Diana, and Rengar are a couple good bans to consider. We've got a ton of mid lane changes for 12.8, first starting with Vladimir. As if Vlad wasn't already a great counter to many AD mids, he becomes even more lethal this patch, with his base armor going from 23 to 27. Even prior to these buffs, Vlad players are winning around 54% of the time in the Yasuo matchup, so with Yas being played a ton right now, Vlad is going to be an excellent mid in 12.8. If there were one more buff thrown in there, we'd have likely moved Vlad into OP, but he will remain in S tier for the time being. Zoe is going to be on the map one-shotting you for a longer duration in 12.8, as her mana cost on Q is going down by 10 at all ranks. That's not all though, as Zoe R mana cost is lowered as well, going from 50 to 40. 20 mana off Zoe's combo is a decent buff, but it's not one that we expect to move the needle in regards to her tier list placement. A good A tier pick is where Zoe lands for 12.8. If you're a mage or AP assassin mid lane player, you're not going to be liking this one, as Kassadin Q shield is being increased by 20 at all ranks. Q shield AP ratio is going up as well, from 30 to 40%. It looks like Riot is really trying to push Kassadin back to being that hard counter to many AP mids. Due to a lot of very strong AD mids being played in meta, and the fact this buff won't affect Cass at all in those matchups, we won't be altering his A tier placement. Cass will, however, be a super strong situational counter pick moving forward. Riot's finally giving some love to Vel'Koz mid, as his Q AP ratio is going from 80 to 90%, while W initial damage ratio is bumped up from 15 to 20%. Vel is a really sleeper counter to many shorter ranged mages like Veigar, Ryze, Orianna, and Anivia, so he'll be a situationally great pickup as a result of these buffs. We'll be moving Vel up one tier, going from B into A. Vel's artillery buddy Xerath is in line for a buff this patch, with his E stun duration increased by 0.25 seconds based on distance traveled. 0.25 seconds may not seem like a lot, but it can actually make the difference in Xerath being able to follow with W and Q after E hits before the enemy dashes or flashes away. Nothing meta shifting, but a quality buff for Xerath, and he will be placed in A tier for 12.8. Sylas's snowball power is getting a bump as his R cooldown is lowered by a whole 20 seconds at rank 1. At max rank, it's going from 40 down to a mere 30 seconds. A great buff that will allow Sylas to accelerate his early advantages, which will be very powerful for solo queue. In saying that, Sylas will be moving up one tier, going from A into S. Despite the fact AP Kai'Sa holds a 44% solo queue win rate, she's extremely obnoxious to play against, so Riot is looking to combat that. Passive missing health damage ratio is going from 2.5% per 100 AP to 5% per 100 AP. W AP ratio drops from 70 to 45%. What Riot's doing here is nerfing the spam poke from W while buffing Kai'Sa if she's actually auto-attacking. Our AP ratio is going to be increased from 75 to 100%. All in all, these changes look to reward a more aggressive style of play while nerfing the sit back and spam W gameplay. Kai'Sa's tier list placement won't be altered from these changes, as she will remain a C tier solo queue pick. Ahri is yet again the most OP solo queue mid laner, while Yasuo slots in beside her as a result of his 12.7 buffs. Riot was planning to nerf Pyke this patch, but they decided to lay off until further notice. If you can play good Pyke mid, he's absolutely insane right now, as his low econ roaming style of play is extremely broken for solo queue. Tristana will see a buff to her AD scaling this patch, which actually helps mid Trist more than it does bot lane. AD per level is going up by 0.4, so not a massive buff, but Trist mid is one to watch. The best low elo mid lane picks are Veigar, Malzahar, and Annie. Zed, Yasuo, and Ahri are a few picks who should be on the ban list. Moving down to the bot lane, Ezreal will see some power added level 11 onwards, with his R cooldown lowered by 15 seconds at rank 2 and by 30 seconds at rank 3. Spamming R for poke once you reach the late game is super lethal for Ez, so the fact it's lowered by 30 seconds will feel quite nice. You do have to consider how often games even last that long though, and with how snowbally solo queue is these days, in reality, these buffs won't mean a whole lot. Nice change, but not impactful enough to push Ezreal up the tier list, so he will keep his A tier spot. As we briefly mentioned when covering mid lane, Tristana's AD per level is being increased from 3.3 to 3.7. A base AD increase would definitely have been more influential, as playing in a duo lane means you're always behind on levels, which taints the potential of this buff. This change alone would not be enough to warrant a tier list bump, but the fact Jinx and Xayah are both nerfed in 12.8 means we'll be pushing Trist past them and into S. Jhin buffs were not something we expected to see, but Riot has other plans. W CC duration is being increased by 0.25 seconds at all ranks. E cooldown is reduced from 28 scaling to 16 seconds to 24 scaling to 14 seconds. Jingle is looking to make an appearance this patch, as W and E damage will no longer be reduced against monsters. As much as 0.25 seconds seems more like a meme than anything, it's an interesting buff, as Jhin W is a longer range spell, so after using it, having that split second of extra time to walk into auto range can actually make a difference in certain situations. These buffs won't push Jhin back on top of the meta, but he will be a very strong S tier pickup this patch. Jinx had a phenomenal run as the best ADC for many months, and Riot likely sold a ridiculous amount of skins as a result, but they're finally putting it to rest in 12.8. Base health is dropping from 610 down to 560, which is a 50 health chop. 50 health is no meme at all, especially if you're fighting at level 2. It's an extra auto worth of health in the early game, and this will really limit Jinx's laning potential. It's time to look elsewhere and start shuffling the champion pool, as Jinx will be a very average B tier option. Lethality Xayah is hit with a couple nerfs, as her Q damage is being reduced by 20 at max rank. Q cooldown is also being increased by 2 seconds at max rank. It looks like Riot is really pushing for Crit Xayah to make a comeback. If you're playing Crit Xayah, you're not maxing Q until last, so these nerfs really won't affect Crit at all. Lethality has without a doubt been the better option though as of recent, so as a result of these nerfs, Xayah will be dropping from S into A for 12.8. Lucian will once again hold on to the lone OP tier slot for another patch. Bot lane meta will definitely be the most interesting to watch out of all the roles for 12.8, as Jinx and Xayah dropping down makes way for these forgotten picks like Tristana and Twitch. If you have enjoyed spamming Jinx in previous patches, then Trist is definitely a great alternative, as her style of play is very similar in the sense that both champs have resets, a good amount of burst, and can pop off super hard in late game fights. The only ADC you really want to stay away from right now is Zeri, as her 12.7 nerfs have been absolutely devastating. Veigar, Misfortune, and Ashe are our top 3 picks for low elo. Vayne, Samira, and Lucian are the highest value bot lane bans for 12.8. Bard is set to receive a couple buffs as his passive damage is increased from 30 to 35. Damage per 5 chimes is going up as well from 12 to 14. W max heal will be increased from 55 scaling to 215 to 60 scaling to 240. Considering the buffs are to parts of Bard's kit that don't take any skill to use, he's going to become much better for solo queue. Extra damage on passive is great, as all you have to do is auto attack to proc the damage. We've had Bard in A tier for a while now, but a push into S tier is what we see fit for 12.8. No surprise to see some Soraka nerfs, as she's held the highest support win rate in previous patches. As you can see in the background gameplay, the heal drops by 23 health when you have it maxed out. About a 10% reduction in Soraka W heal power, which will put a dent in her power level, but it won't shift her tier list placement. The fact Soraka has been so far ahead of everyone else in previous patches means she will now be more in line with the other OP picks. The Swain mini rework goes live this patch, so let's get you completely up to speed. Passive will no longer allow Swain to pull CC'd enemies. In fact, Swain passive will no longer have the pull effect in general. That will now be transferred onto his E. Passive healing is going up, while health per soul fragment is being increased as well. There are so many different changes to Q, so we will have the specifics on screen if you want to pause and take a look. Mana cost is lowered, the cooldown is lowered, and damage is increased. W mana cost is being lowered from 70 scaling to 100 to 60 scaling to 80. E can now be reactivated to pull all champions rooted. Before, you would only be able to pull one enemy, so this is a very interesting buff. E cooldown will now be reduced by 20% while R is active. R cooldown is being significantly lowered, however, the damage goes down while the heal per second is up later on. You will no longer be granted health when using Swain R, however, his ultimate can last for an infinite duration as long as Swain has demon power. R2 damage is being increased and will now slow opponents by 60% over 1.5 seconds. A huge buff as well is that you are now able to cast R2 once and it doesn't end the drain from R1. Overall, these changes really push Swain to being that tanky AP bruiser who thrives in extended teamfights. We won't be altering Swain's tier list placement for the time being because it's nearly impossible for us to get an accurate read on how strong he will be for solo queue until we see him live for a couple days. Keep your eye out for our mid-patch tier list update where we will have a verdict on where Swain slots in. The support tier list has Senna, Janna, Blitzcrank, Soraka, and Renata Glask as the OP carries for 12.8. Even though the Vel'Koz and Xerath buffs are targeted more towards mid lane, they will slightly help both champs for support as well. Xerath more so than Vel'Koz, as the stun duration buff is nice to provide extra lockdown for you and your carry to finish off targets. We don't see either of the changes being enough to shift Vel or Xerath up the tier list, so they remain in A tier. Even though Poppy is very rarely played in the support role, W buff does actually help her quite a bit in certain matchups. As a situational counter to someone like Leona, Poppy support will be super sleeper this patch. Low elo gems for support include Soraka, Blitz, and Zyra. Highest value bans for support are Renata Glask, Soraka, and Senna. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about SkillCapped. So, we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that, right? Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week, with over 1,600 guides curated into over 100 courses no one can compare. We've also sent challenger players into Elo Hell 714 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you are serious about improving. And that's going to wrap it all up for our 12.8 tier list update. Good luck out there in solo queue, and we'll see you back soon.